Hiya and welcome once again to the Sunday Reflection. This week for Sunday the 19th of June, and as I sit here recording this before Sunday, I think you've probably picked that up by now, the sun is shining and I can hear all the birds tweeting. It is glorious, glorious, and how that raises our spirits, doesn't it, when the weather's so lovely. So I hope you're all okay and that you've had a good week and you are able to enjoy the wonderful summery weather. It means my tomatoes are growing like ferns. They really are coming on now. So at various stages, which I'm pretty delighted about. So that's good. And I remembered, I forgot to tell you last week that when we had the Jubilee weekend Church Together 1950s afternoon tea celebration extravaganza, Rishi Sunak turned up and was actually really lovely. I felt a bit sorry for him really. He'd been all over the Dales on that Saturday. Obviously they had arranged for him to go to almost everything, so he was really late getting to us, so he missed his free ice cream. And in fact it was coming to an end and I was finally relaxing and I thought, oh, do you know what, I think I might go in and just have a little sit down and a tiny piece of fruit cake. And that's exactly what I did, and I just put a piece in my mouth when the local councillor, Karen Sedgwick, came running in and was like, quick, 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 Rishi's here. And I'm like, great, there we go, now I'm going to have cake all over my teeth. But he was very gracious. He took time to share with everybody, spoke to all those, particularly all those that had worked hard with the refreshments. They appreciated that. And he stayed and chatted and helped himself to some cake and a few pastries. I think he's quite keen on the pastries. Anyway, I thought you might, regardless of your politics, the poor guy was doing his best. But he's so tiny. He's really tiny. I couldn't believe it. But he came across as a genuinely nice man. So I'll leave it there. Okay, so Sunday the 19th of June, and really I'm going to focus on this reflection on healing. Now you're probably thinking, well, hang on a minute, Sunday the 19th of June, isn't that Father's Day? Well, yes, it is Father's Day. And doesn't Refugee Week begin on the 20th? And yes, that's true also. But I'm also conscious that Father's Day can be a wonderful, joyous occasion, but for some that is not the case and it might be a difficult day. And definitely with Ukraine at the forefront of our minds and with the media constantly filled with the conversation around refugees and asylum seekers, we recognise the reality of human suffering, don't we? On so many levels. That I wanted to focus on healing and draw all those things together so that we will think about them, but through the concept and the understanding and the idea of healing, and how when kindness is shown, things are so much better and the world is such a better place. So that's what I'm going to be concentrating on. So before I start reading the Bible reading, here's a question for us to ponder. I wonder what makes us feel safe and secure. What makes you feel safe and secure? So feel free to shout out at me. I can't actually hear you, but I'm sure there are things that are coming to mind. So having a home to live in, I think that makes us feel safe and secure. Having enough money. Having enough food. Our family. Our friends. If we were to ask a young child, what makes them feel safe and secure, maybe the answers would be different. When our oldest daughter, who is now 35, but when she was merely 3, I think it was 3, we took her on a holiday to Disney World in Florida. And because we lived in Cornwall at the time, it meant that we obviously were flying from Gatwick and we had to get from Cornwall all the way to London. Anyway, to cut a very long story short, the taxi was turning up like at 5 in the morning. And it was all a bit of a rush, when you're getting ready and then the taxi's here, quick, quick, quick. So it was rush, get the bags out, get everything. And we were in the car and we were kind of, 2 or 3 miles up the road, and suddenly she shouted out, "Percy! Where's Percy? I can't go without Percy." Now, Percy was her penguin. In fact, it was a penguin that my husband brought back for me from the Falkland Islands when we were courting. And yes, this week has seen the 40th anniversary of the Falklands conflict, hasn't it? But Percy had always been a real favourite of Crystal's. From when she was almost just really a few months old, she took a real love to this penguin, which was quite big. And she would suck her thumb and she would hold on to his beak, and suck her thumb. So I'd lost count how many times I had to replace his nose, because the poor thing had been through the wars. But it had to go everywhere. It made her feel safe and secure. It had to go everywhere. And we had left it at home in our rush and in her excitement and rush to get into the taxi because she was going on holiday to Disney World. We'd left Percy on the settee in the front room. And the taxi driver was pretty clear. There is no time to go back. I've got to get you to the railway station. So she was very distressed. And even in Disney World, buying her, a huge Tigger and a huge Mickey Mouse so that she could have somebody to sleep with, because Percy was the bed companion. She couldn't wait to get home. And Percy was back in pride of place next to her in the bed every night. Interesting, isn't it? What makes us feel safe and secure? So I'll leave you think about what makes you feel safe and secure as I read from. So I'm going to read from Luke in the New Testament. So you're a dab hand at finding these now. Don't think you need any instructions from me. Luke chapter 8. Verses 26 to 39. So Luke 8, 26 to 39. And today, the one that was nearest to hand is the New Living Translation, just so that you know. So this is how it begins. So they arrived in the land of the Gerasenes across the lake from Galilee. As Jesus was climbing out of the boat, a man who was possessed by demons came out to meet him. Homeless and naked, he had lived in a cemetery for a long time. As soon as he saw Jesus, he shrieked and fell to the ground before him, screaming, "Why are you bothering me, Jesus, Son of the Most High God? Please, I beg you, don't torture me." For Jesus had already commanded the evil spirit to come out of him. This spirit had often taken control of the man. Even when he was shackled with chains, he simply broke them and rushed out into the wilderness, completely under the demon's power. "What is your name?" Jesus asked. "Legion," he replied, for the man was filled with many demons. The demons kept begging Jesus not to send them into the bottomless pit. A large herd of pigs was feeding on the hillside nearby, and the demons pleaded with him to let them enter the pigs. Jesus gave them permission. So the demons came out of the man and entered the pigs, and the whole herd plunged down the steep hillside into the lake, where they drowned. When the herdsmen saw it, they fled to the nearby city and the surrounding countryside, spreading the news as they ran. A crowd soon gathered around Jesus, for they wanted to see for themselves what had happened. And they saw the man who had been possessed by demons sitting quietly at Jesus' feet, clothed and sane. And the whole crowd was afraid. Then those who had seen what happened told the others how the demon-possessed man had been healed. And all the people in that region begged Jesus to go away and leave them alone, for a great wave of fear swept over them. So Jesus returned to the boat and left, crossing back to the other side of the lake. The man who had been demon-possessed begged to go too, but Jesus said, "No, go back to your family and tell them all the wonderful things that God has done for you." So he went all through the city, telling about the great thing that Jesus had done for him. There are many things in our society that have the potential to isolate someone, to be the root cause of why an individual may slowly or abruptly drop out of society or are forced to withdraw from society. I'm sure you can think of many things. Divorce, loss of a job, the death of a loved one, bankruptcy, retirement, moving house, moving school, moving overseas, moving into a care home. In fact, any significant life event can impact on us negatively, especially a period of illness. However, I would like to suggest that there is nothing quite as isolating as mental illness or mental health issues. Mind, the national mental health charity founded in 1946, reports that approximately 1 in 4 people in the UK will experience a mental health problem each year. And in England, 1 in 6 people report experiencing a common mental health problem such as anxiety and depression in any given week. However, these statistics have been taken from studies that have surveyed people living in private housing in England. So clearly the figures do not include the number of people experiencing mental health problems in hospitals, prisons, sheltered housing, or people who are homeless. And even today, with many celebrities and indeed the royal family prepared to openly talk about mental health challenges, there is still a stigma, isn't there? There is still a stigma, and people often feel isolated and alone, unable or afraid to talk about how they feel for fear of being shunned and avoided. So in today's Bible passage, we find a man with severe mental illness. He is described as demon-possessed, which reflects the culture and the understanding of the time, and in many ways is the legacy that has contributed to the stigma that still surrounds mental illness. People had no other explanation for the man's behaviour, and so genuinely believed he was demon-possessed. A debate on was he or wasn't he demon-possessed is, I believe, futile, and it will just divert our attention away from what Jesus did for this man. The man was homeless, naked, and living in a cemetery, in a graveyard. We should probably add to that he was friendless. There had been times when the local residents had chained him down, probably through fear. He was not wanted. But try to imagine just for a moment what kind of existence this man led. How afraid was he? How lonely, how tortured and wretched. We cannot perhaps even begin to grasp the enormity of his suffering. He has, in reality, been banished from all and anything that may remind him that he is human. When did he last experience love or kindness or compassion? When did he last feel safe and secure? Then Jesus arrives in this land. It is a Gentile region, a non-Jewish area southeast of the Sea of Galilee, known as the home of the 10 towns, 10 Greek cities that belonged to no country and were self-governing. Now, from a Jewish perspective, it was an area where unclean people lived with livelihoods that included breeding and raising unclean pigs. We picked up why that was in there, that little nugget of information. Because the insinuation is, of course, that this is a godless region. It is unimportant. It is unwanted, the whole region. And within it is an unwanted demon-possessed man. So what on earth was Jesus doing there? That is the question that people would have asked. But maybe the question should be, why would Jesus be anywhere else? It's a powerful story about the extent of God's love for all people. Jesus healed the man and restored him back into society, freeing him up to walk amongst people once again and to tell his story. He was given value, acceptance, and a purpose. He was made whole. He was healed inside and out. He was finally safe and secure. Jesus, interestingly, crossed back to the other side of the lake, leaving the man to get on with spreading the good news of what had happened to him. Healing and wholeness. Healing and wholeness is always linked to restoration in the New Testament, being restored back into society, having a place, having value. Now, today we have access to amazing medical advancements and treatments, don't we? Things that people who lived in the first century in this story could never have imagined. But even with all of that, being at peace with God, with others and with ourselves often eludes us. And this man found peace through his encounter with Jesus. We cannot even imagine how his life was transformed. Healing. Healing involves recovering from a painful experience or a situation so that we can contribute. Yes, so that we can contribute to society, but more important, so that we can continue to live with hope. And the man in this story, through the intervention of Jesus, was able to recover from his painful situation and begin a new life, a new life of hope and joy, inclusion and acceptance. It is a wonderful account, isn't it? But the reality is that it was 2,000 years ago. So what about today? It can be so easy. It can be so easy to keep our heads down and not think too much about others, and significantly, refugees. It's the hot topic, isn't it? Refugees, and is deeply concerning. But no one understands this story better, I suggest, than those who have had to build new lives from scratch. Those desperately trying to hold on to hope when going on seems impossible, when nowhere feels safe and secure and nobody wants them around. Who is going to care enough to enable the healing process to begin for those facing poverty, housing difficulties, and the threat of being detained or deported? That's the ethical and moral challenge that we face as individuals, that we face as a nation, and that we face as a world community. Jesus offered healing because he cared. He truly cared. So whether it's about looking after ourselves and each other at difficult times, overcoming political divisions, or coming together to fight for the survival of our shared planet, healing matters to all of us. So imagine then with me a world where healing replaces harm and care becomes our shared currency. Is it possible? Is it really possible? A world where healing replaces harm and care becomes our shared currency. Is it possible? And is that not what God the Creator, God the Father, would wish? So pray with me. Lord, how the world needs your healing. We think of the blight of plastic polluting our rivers and oceans, or the distress of creatures on the verge of extinction, the scars of climate change and the sufferings inflicted by conflict. Forgive us if we unwittingly play any part in these things. Show us what we can do to help bring change in the world. Lord, there are so many forms of pain and suffering. How we need your healing hand. Forgive us when the pull of social media is so great that we stray into wrong territory. For the pain we inflict by choosing to follow our own paths and schemes, or when we think ourselves to be better than others, or allow differences to separate us. Your healing hands are always open. Forgive us when we ignore them, whether through fear, ignorance, or self-will. Lord, there is so much sin and pain in our broken world. Touch each of us now with your healing power, that we may be conduits for the healing of others. Amen. So whether you're involved in Refugee Week next week, whether today is a difficult day for you, let's all concentrate on healing, how important it is. So I'll see you again next week. Conference Sunday, I believe, and a real celebration here in this circuit as we mark Reverend Julia's ordination. So take care of yourselves, and I'll see you soon. God bless.